My name is Sister Mesoma Ohams from Medical Laboratory Sciences 500 level. Why MLS? Okay, at first I don't think I had any leading to go into MLS actually, because initially I wanted to do nursing, but then I didn't enter school immediately. I had to work in a lab for 1 year. Yes, 1 year and more. So I just felt like, okay, this is something I could do in school. So that is why I went for med lab science. How did I find God? This is okay. All right. A major way I found God was actually through men. Through men. I could remember in first year, one thing that God did for me was that He brought me around men that would channel me to God. Yes, I had a group of friends that always steered my hunger to God. So I think that one of the major ways that I found God was through men. And then when I came to UNEC, around my third year, God also brought me under a man. I call him my pastor. So, and I found out that every time he's bringing me to certain people, he's revealing to me another dimension of himself. The thing actually is, I grew up in a Christian home where we always go to church, scripture union and all that. So I knew I loved God actually, but then I knew that it hasn't become very tangible. So the very first place after salvation, that was 2010, our end of the year camp meeting. The theme was my sheep hear my voice, from John chapter 10. So I knew that something had happened, but I didn't really have a proper follow-up. I didn't really know what to do, you get. So it was in 2018 when I came to UNN. Actually, I promised myself I won't be going for fellowship. I was already exhausted, religion without, there was no much interesting thing in religion. So I felt maybe once in a while I'll go for fellowship. So I know God heard it. And then just the very first meeting I attended in SCCF UNEC, He trapped me. That was the team exposition. And our speaker then was Daddy Shalom Onka. And that was where I met God now for myself. So that was where God prompted my heart to make decisions that from now on I'm seeking Him, not because of my parents' reputation, because they know my family at home, or Ham's family, this is who you are, you get. So I was trying to live up the faith of another person, but that was where I now made the decision to seek God for myself. And that was where it all started. And one thing that God gave me then was an unusual hunger. It was so much then. That was when I started praying as I've never done before. I spent time with the Word of God. And then God brought some speakers that I sat under. But one thing happened then, because I was so hungry, Jesus. I was basically everywhere and listening to anything that is message. So what I was experiencing then was I knew a lot of things, I knew a lot of truth, but they were not balanced in my life, and there was little experience of the things I already knew. So one thing that God did was He brought people that would, just specific persons that I would just sit under these ones, so that my life and the information I have about God will be shaped, so I won't be scattered. I was really scattered. So that was the first point that God began to help my life. He brought me to just two persons and I sat under them. I began to listen to them. That was how I started growing up. The truths that I knew, they began to have shape in my life, and then I could see growth. When I crossed over to UNEC, the environment was so strange. The atmosphere was very dry. And then I now came for fellowship. I was expecting something. I came to fellowship. That day I slept all through in fellowship. I slept. The speaker left the topic that he was supposed to teach and he was saying something else. I was like, God. I started calculating in my head, okay, which other fellowship should I start going to? And all that. I was still coming to fellowship, not because I really wanted to. I was still checking where and where I should go, because what I was seeing there, you can't compare it to where I was coming from. That is SCCF UNN. So that was the period that God raised the matter in my heart, and he asked me a question. The very well you enjoyed over there, was it not some people that labored and made sure that when we come, there is something to enjoy? So God asked me, and then specific people. We were just few of us. I didn't know some other people were also having the same encounter. And he said, the same well you enjoyed over there, dig that well here, so that when other people come, they will also enjoy the well that you've dug. So we had to labor. I began to labor in the place of prayer. I wasn't actually ready then. What do I know I'm digging? I thought I was still young in the faith. I would put it like that. I didn't know so much. So, but the little I could do, I started praying to God. Connected few of us together. We began to pray, and that was how I grew in the place, or in the office of intercessory. Another way UNEC has affected my life is that I came to a point that people began to expect so much from me. I didn't know why. I would say even before I began to lead. So because of that, I was tense to really meet up to whatever people were expecting from me. Even those I should be looking up to, few of them actually were coming around, and I saw people that needed help. And that's very help. I wasn't seeing myself meeting up to the help. So one of the things that God began to deal with me in that aspect is that people will come to me as their last solution and not live with that same problem. You get? So I began to dig deeper in God, so that when people come around me, I can also meet up to the spiritual need they had. So I think it's one of the ways SCCF helped me. I saw a need in the house, and then it made me seek God, first of all for myself, and then for the people around me. Even if I don't want to believe it, because I did not want to believe it actually, that people are looking up to me and all that. I didn't like that. It mounted a lot of pressure, because you need to meet up to these people's expectation. So I couldn't live my normal life as every other person. I needed to do everything extra just to meet up with demands of people. And then God said that He would hold me responsible of certain people in the fellowship. The capacities I served in SCCF. First of all, I served as the music director of SCCF, then as the vice president of SCCF, and currently as the assistant Suff coordinator of SCCF. It was a warfare actually. At some point, I gave up on academics. Literally, like I gave up on academics. I was like, let's just be doing spiritual things and be going. When we graduate, we'll leave this and continue with the ministry. That was my mindset, and it lasted for a whole session. Until then, again, God brought people my way. People like Robert, he began to deal on the matter of academics. So it took me a long time to balance myself. I knew that seeing that I'm now a leader, I'm no longer an ordinary student. So I would need to start early enough to do whatever that I would need to do. So I started it. I began to study earlier than I should. Although it was looking like I was wasting my time. It wasn't yielding fruit, but I kept at it. Now, in my final year, I'm not even struggling at all with academics. I'm not, or not because I'm no longer a leader per se. But I think it's one of the things that helped me. I had to sit down to really, the Bible said that any man that wants to build a house to sit down and count the cost. So I had to sit down. What do you want, Mesama? I know that you are no longer interested in academics. One thing that God began to bring back to me was the consciousness that I was a student. So He had to help me begin to have passion for academics again. And then I started working towards early study and being conscious of time. I know the period of time that God brought also certain people. They were just hammering time management. How I was able to balance it were through the counsel of people, and then I was conscious of time. Although I didn't do that so much, but at some point it really helped me. And then I had to start early enough to do things so that it won't choke me. And then even though I was a leader, I was not really coming for every step. In my third day, people didn't even know me much. Just maybe on Sundays, or I had to select what I come for, even though I was a leader. There are meetings that can hold in my absence. You must not be in everything, but anyone that demands that you are there, you will come there. At some point, my driving force was just to meet up to people's expectation. And I found out that I was losing my touch with God in the secret place, because everything that I was thinking, when they call you mama here, they'll call you this one, how do I make sure I hold on to this reputation that people are already tagging me with? You get? So that was my driving force at some point. I stayed there for a long time, especially when I became the vice president. Like, it was so much there. I knew I was a leader, but I was lost in touch. Like, I wasn't really close to God then, because something else was in there. So I now had to get back to God to find out, why really am I into this? So one of the things that helped me to balance or to keep the fire burning, even in the midst of activities, was to consciously tell myself, okay, you are not actually serving people, you are serving God. It was God that brought you into service. And then God began to remind me that why He brought me into service was not because of the capacities I have. It was because of the weaknesses or the things He found in me that needs to be worked on. So He felt leadership would be a platform to deal with them. So I should not get distracted. So I had to stay with God many of the times. The first thing that He had to do in my life was to make me lose consciousness of what people think about me, because that gave me a lot of pressure. I had to take God personally beyond what fellowship thought about Him, because there was even a time I was struggling with one particular habit. In that period, I was so down spiritually, so down spiritually, and that was when so many people were coming around, Sister Harms. I was like, is anybody not perceiving this thing? So I now understood that you can even be dying as a leader, nobody knows, and they're still calling you Sister Harms, and you're still carrying activities on the head and all that. I had to calm down, leave all these portfolios. I went to see God myself, and He began to help me. So I lost the tension of trying to please others, so that when they come, they will know that this is a woman of God. That was pride came in at some point. I wouldn't lie to you. So it got to a point that if somebody did not recognize me, I started feeling somehow. I knew that something was already creeping into the whole matter. So I had to see God. I did a lot of retreats in my 4th year. I did a whole lot. That was basically where I received a lot of help. I always have a way of going back to God to ask, what is this happening and how do we tackle it? I actually have a lot of regrets in my stay in school as in UNEC here, and then I also have a lot of regrets during my service, because many of the times when I now learned how to do things was when I was almost done with leadership and almost done with school. That was when I started gaining balance in a lot of things. So one of the things I regret is not being consistent with a lot of things. I was not consistent with people's life. I was not consistent with instructions that came around. I was not consistent even with my own dealings that helped in my growth. Like a burden will come down, you are doing it, you're attending to it. Maybe sometime later you are distracted. So inconsistency is one of the things I regret. And then another thing I regret is, I'd said it earlier, I was so conscious of what people were expecting from me, and it really affected my walk with God. Then I kind of lost consciousness with what God thinks about me. I was conscious with what people felt about me, and that was when I was even that period. It led to a lot of things. Actually, it led to a whole lot of things, a whole lot of things. But thank God He is helping me. Then another thing I regret as a leader is not taking my academics so seriously. Then I felt we came to do ministry. UNEC is just a passage. We always say that it's just a passage that God is taking you through, but that's not the main thing you came to school to do. So I was so conscious of that. I didn't take my academics, but thank God that God was merciful enough. At least now let's try it, and it is not as bad as it sounds, but I know I would have done so much better. I know as a leader, people are not just looking at your spiritual life. Even your academics can be a point of encouragement to people. So I feel like I would have done better in that aspect too. I regret it that the point I am now, even spiritually, is not the point I should have been. I know it before leaving this school. Yes, so I feel like I didn't put so much effort into pressing harder into God. I know this is not where I would have been with God now, but I know that God is taking us somewhere. But then I know it that had it been I did better. I actually lost a lot of things in leadership. I lost my space, I lost my privacy, I lost the me, because me, I don't really talk to people. I like staying on my own. I'm not the type that like smile, and I like my life like that. I like it like that because. But then when I came into leadership, you can't be doing like that. So one of the things that brought me into school, aside the fact that SCCF said as a leader you must come to school, and they even promised that they will give me a hostel. So I was like, oh, okay, maybe hostel I'll just manage one roommate, because I wanted to be alone. I came to a hostel that I had 15 roommates, and then among the 15 roommates, there were ones that squatted, so we were up to 20 in that room. I was like, how was I going to do this? I didn't have my space. At some point I had to squat 2 persons, so we were 3 in my space actually, and it was terrible. But thank God for what God worked out of me through those experiences. Because then when you come back from school, at the first time I came into that place, that 4th year, we were not really having lectures, so people were busy. I was almost always around, so I'll do a lot of cookings, and then by the time I come back, my roommates everywhere like, mama, they have finished my food. Because I didn't like it, and I like when you come to my space, I like the way I leave my things, and I want to come back seeing my things the same way. Like, I kept my pen here, it should be here. Like, I'm that calculative, so I will now come back, this person, oh, I took this one, and it was terrible. So I began to miss myself. I had to always be smiling because people expect me to smile. People said a lot, I don't have this welcoming face and all. They said a lot of things, and I knew as a leader I should be welcoming at least. And so these were the things I lost. But I don't think now, seeing it now, although there are a few times I still miss myself, I still want to be alone, not talk to anybody, have my space all to myself. But I know that I don't regret that part of me that was taken away because of leadership. I don't regret the sacrifices I made. I made a lot of sacrifices beyond SCCF. I knew that Even before I was made the vice president of SCCF, I was already doing a lot of work, background work in SCCF that people didn't even know. So there were a lot of sleepless nights, there were a lot of youth sacrifices, there were a lot we had to do things that pained us. There were a lot we had to give out our time, even the time we did not have, we had to give it out. There were times you had to take care of some people somewhere else because you are a leader in fellowship and that's what you should do. So others are enjoying the whatever enjoyment, you don't even have time for yourself. So I barely had time for myself. I didn't have time for myself. I was always making out time for people, and then people would be like, there was a particular sister, what she said, like, I don't care, I don't do this. You have your group of people that you talk to and all this that you care about. This was a sister I know I spent like 3 days with in the hospital and did more. Even days I did not even brush my teeth. Early in the morning, I'm about to do my quiet and they'll be like, this sister is in the hospital. Oh yeah, I was a sister's coordinator then, so I didn't have my time to myself. I was basically running around the whole unit. Sometimes we Dunlop slippers and all that, and I wouldn't want to mention them like practically, but I knew I did not have time for myself. So before I think about myself, I had to think about so many people. I had to stretch myself because my prayer life is no longer covering just me or maybe my family. It has come to the point that it was covering both people in the fellowship, because I had people that God emphatically said, this one, this one, this one, make sure you are seeing to their life. God held me responsible for them. So I knew what I did to meet up. Sometimes I was not even meeting up, and that was where it affected my academics. I knew a lot of decisions I had to take that would hurt my academics just to meet up with the spiritual life of some people. But now, looking at it, I don't think I regret it, because I know that I might not have done much for people, but I know that there's an impact I'm leaving in the lives of people, and that's one thing I treasure so much. I treasure it so much. Okay, my counsel to other student leaders, first of all, is just find God for yourself. Find God for yourself. It was even the much I found God that I was able to relate with some people that came around me. So the point I was so conscious and I was tensed, under pressure to meet up with people's expectations because I was a leader. I wasn't able to go deeper in God, so I wouldn't want other students to have the same regret I'm having now. Just make out time for God much more than you make out time for people. Don't be too busy with activities and then you have lost touch with God. I was like that for a period of time. Jesus, it was too terrible. I was everywhere in the activities of SCCF, but I was nowhere in the activities of the spirit. I was just shallow, very shallow. So I had to drop all these portfolios. I had to go back to God to seek help. Thank God the help came, even though it took a while, but then it came. So it's one of the counsel I would want to give other student leaders. Another thing I would want to say is, once you become a leader, you no longer have the same curriculum with other people that are just students. So anything you have to do, you be very much on time before doing them, very much on time, so that it won't have to choke you later on. Another thing I would like to say is, as a leader in the house of God, constantly instructions will be coming in constantly. I didn't say this, but one of the things I regretted, there were times that instructions came, I didn't know when exactly to handle these instructions that came, and it led to a whole lot of things. So one of the things is that even as we are trusting God that He will be bringing instructions to your heart personally for your life, and then for the house of SCCF or for wherever you are leading, make sure that you know the time frame for each instructions. It will really help you. Yes, it will really help you, so that you don't begin something that God has not begun, and then you get to a point you are frustrated. It's not looking like is it not God that gave me this instruction? Why is it that I'm already frustrated in it? So there were a lot of things that God said then. The reason why he told me those things then was so that I'll prepare my mind to where I am going to. Many of the times he didn't want me to start doing anything then as at then. So I now begin them, and then I'm not seeing God helping me in the so-called instruction, and it was frustrating me. So I think that one of the counsels that will be coming from me is that alongside with getting instructions from God, I should also gain when the time frame for whatever instruction that is coming my way. And then finally, just enjoy God. I told myself, I'll not leave this school like this. I'll not leave this school like this. I want to touch God so well that when I leave outside school, one of the senior friends that came around, he was saying that life is not so real in school. It's when you now leave school, all the things I am a man of faith. It's outside school that if you're actually a man of faith. And thank God, there were 3 things that God gave me the grace for in this school. One of them is the grace of strength. I walked in unusual strength. I don't know how it came, but God saw my weakness, and that was one of the graces I enjoyed in school. And one of the things I also enjoyed in school is faith, an unusual faith. And then I want to get better so that when I leave school and then life begins to demand the things I claim I have gathered in school, I'll be able to dish out whatever it is. When something drops, it has dropped, so you will not be struggling with them. So make sure that whatever you get, let it drop while you are in school, so that when you live outside there, you are not doing guesswork and not doing try and error. It might cause a lot of damage. So I would counsel every student to make sure you touch God here for yourself, so that when you go outside school, finally you can be able to dish out the part of God that you've been able to touch.